I never thought my violin would bring me to the Vatican. Most of my career had been background noise. Weddings, small concerts, the occasional recording gig. Enough to pay rent on my cramped apartment in New York. Enough to keep me from putting the violin back in its case for good. But then, out of nowhere, a letter arrived. The seal was what stopped me. Heavy crimson wax stamped with the keys of St. Peter. At first, I thought it was some elaborate prank, but inside, written in formal Latin and then carefully translated, was an invitation. The Holy See requests your presence for a sacred performance within St. Peter's Basilica. Travel arrangements have been prepared. I laughed when I first read it. Me, play in the Vatican. I wasn't even Catholic. My grandparents were Italian immigrants who carried their faith like a second skin, but I'd grown up drifting from Sunday school to nowhere. Music was my church. The violin was my confessional. And yet, I couldn't shake the weight of that letter. 2 weeks later, I was stepping onto the cobblestones of Rome, violin case in hand, staring at the massive dome of St. Peter's rising above the skyline like something eternal. The air smelled of rain and incense. The streets hummed with tourists, but the invitation in my pocket set me apart, like I was walking a road no one else could see. Inside the basilica, shadows stretched impossibly long under the vaulted ceilings. I was met not by a priest, but by a man whose very presence made me uneasy. Cardinal Balori. He was older, tall, with sharp features that seemed carved from marble. His eyes, though, were alive, restless, hungry. "Daniel Carver," he said, his English smooth, only faintly accented. "We are honored. You have been chosen for a most sacred task." "I think you've got the wrong guy," I muttered, gripping my case tighter. Balori's smile was thin. "The wrong man does not carry the right sound. You will see." He led me through a maze of corridors tourists never touched, dim halls lit by flickering lamps, the scent of dust and centuries clinging to the walls. Finally, we entered a small rehearsal chamber. At the center stood a simple wooden stand, and on it a manuscript bound in leather so dark it was almost black. "This," Balori said reverently, "is the music you will play. It has not been heard in centuries, perhaps not ever by mortal ears." I stepped closer. The pages weren't covered in notes I recognized. No treble clefs, no staffs, no neat black dots. Instead, there were spirals, jagged lines, symbols that looked half mathematical, half hieroglyphic. The ink shimmered faintly in the candlelight, like it didn't want to be still. "This isn't music," I said. "It's something else." Balori only smiled. "Play it. The violin will know." I wanted to laugh in his face, but something about his calm certainty rooted me. Slowly, I took out my instrument, resting it under my chin, bow trembling in my hand. The moment the bow touched the string, the air changed. The pitch wasn't one I recognized, yet my fingers found it anyway, like the instrument was guiding me. The notes crawled under my skin. They weren't beautiful. They were vast, too vast for one man in one room. Halfway through the first measure, I swore the floor shifted beneath me. The crucifix on the wall shuddered, and from the corner of my eye, I saw the small statue of the Virgin Mary tilt forward. I stopped playing instantly. The room fell silent again, the candle flames steady. The statue hadn't moved. Or maybe it had. My breath came in sharp gasps. "What the hell was that?" Balori's expression never changed. "Proof that you were the right one." The music responds, as it always does. He closed the manuscript and rested a hand on it like a priest with a relic. "There will be a performance 3 nights from now, in the presence of the Holy Father himself. Until then, you will practice, and you will not ask questions." I wanted to argue, to demand what I had just seen. But something in his eyes, something colder than authority, something like inevitability, stopped me. He placed the manuscript back on the stand and turned to leave. "One more thing, Mr. Carver. This music must never be played outside these walls. It is not meant for the profane world. The door shut behind him, leaving me alone with my violin and the strange score. I sat in silence for a long time, bow still in my hand, trying to convince myself that what I saw had been nerves, jet lag, imagination. But the strings of my violin hummed faintly, even though I hadn't touched them. And when I lifted the bow again, I swore I heard something else beneath the sound. Voices, faint, layered, weeping in a language I didn't understand. I should have left then. I should have put the violin back in its case, walked out of the basilica, and never looked back. But I didn't. And 3 nights later, I would find out why no one should ever play the music of the choir below. They left me in the rehearsal chamber with the manuscript. The door clicked shut, the sound echoing like a lock in a prison. For a long while, I just stared at it, the dark leather glowing faintly in the candlelight. Every instinct told me to keep my case closed, to walk out, to pretend I'd never seen any of this. But curiosity has a way of hollowing out fear, leaving only a dangerous kind of courage behind. I opened the manuscript. The symbols seemed to shift when I looked too long. They weren't notes, not really. More like a script designed to trick the eye into believing it could be read. My fingers twitched against the strings of my violin even before I lifted the bow. The damn thing felt alive, eager, as if it had been waiting for this exact moment. I drew the first note. The sound was sharp, resonant, vibrating deeper than the wood should allow. My chest rattled with it. My teeth ached. The bow slid to the next line almost on its own, and suddenly I wasn't playing. I was following. My violin knew this music better than I did. By the third measure, the air thickened. The shadows on the walls bent, curling like smoke. I heard something layered beneath the note, whispers, faint but real, dozens of voices pressed into one, breathing through my strings. I froze, bow hovering. The room exhaled with me as though disappointed I'd stopped. "Keep playing," the voice came from behind. I turned sharply to find Sister Umbra standing in the doorway, her veil casting shadows across her face. She looked too young to be so serious, too fragile to belong in these halls. But her eyes were sharp, uncomfortably sharp. "You startled me," I said. "I didn't hear you come in. You weren't supposed to." Her gaze shifted to the manuscript. "They gave it to you already." I nodded. "If you can call it music." Umbra stepped inside, her hands folded. "It isn't. At least, not music meant for human ears." "What is it then?" I asked. She hesitated, as if the walls themselves might be listening. "A language, notes that open doors." Her words sank into me like cold water. "Doors to where?" Instead of answering, she crossed the room and stopped before a small marble statue of the Virgin Mary tucked into a niche. "Do you believe in miracles, Daniel?" I laughed nervously. "I play weddings for a living. The only miracles I've seen involve brides showing up on time." Her lips curved, but her eyes stayed grim. "Play again and watch her face." Something in her tone made my stomach twist. Still, I raised the violin and let the bow draw across the strings. The sound filled the chamber, sharp and resonant, but this time I focused on the statue. At first nothing happened. Then, slowly, a thin red line appeared beneath one marble eye. My bow faltered. The line thickened, rolled down her cheek, and dripped onto the stone base, a tear of blood. I dropped the bow, the clatter echoing. "Jesus Christ!" Umbra crossed herself. "No, not him!" I backed away, heart pounding. What the hell's going on here? What is this music? Her eyes flicked to the manuscript, then back to me. "It's not mine to say, but know this. Once you've played even a single line, you belong to it. The choir below hears you now." "The choir? What?" Umbra stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The voices you had heard beneath your strings, they are real. They have been bound here for centuries, forced to sing a hymn that isn't theirs. And now, through you, They've found a new instrument. I shook my head. No, no, I didn't hear anything. Her gaze pierced through me. Then why are your hands still shaking? I looked down. She was right. My fingers trembled uncontrollably, as though they still clung to the bow. Amara placed a hand over mine, steadying it. Be careful, Daniel. This place is built on silence, but not all silences are holy. Before I could respond, the heavy door creaked open again. Cardinal Bellori stepped inside, his crimson robes trailing. His presence smothered the air. How does it sound? He asked, his smile thin. Wrong, I blurted. It feels wrong. Bellori's eyes gleamed. Good. Then you are hearing it correctly. He gestured toward the manuscript. You will practice until it no longer feels wrong. By the night of the performance, it must feel inevitable. I wanted to argue, to throw the violin across the room and walk out, but when I looked at the statue again, another tear of blood glistened on its cheek, and I realized Bellori didn't see it, or pretended not to. Only Amara and I had watched it fall. The cardinal's voice cut through the silence. 3 nights, Mr. Carver. Do not fail the music. He swept out, leaving the door yawning open behind him. I packed the violin into its case with shaking hands. My ears still rang with whispers, faint but insistent, like the sound of a choir weeping. That night, I dreamed of bowing my strings and finding not notes, but voices crying for freedom in a language no man was meant to understand. And when I woke, my pillow was damp, not with sweat, but with a smear of red, like the tears from the statue had followed me into sleep. The next night, they brought me deeper into the basilica. Cardinal Bellori's footsteps echoed ahead of me, crisp against the marble, each strike ringing like a metronome. Beside me walked Sister Amara, her eyes fixed on the floor, lips pressed so tightly together, I wondered if she was silently praying. We descended staircases tourists never see, past locked doors and velvet curtains, until we reached a chamber that hummed with the sound of voices. It wasn't singing exactly. It was closer to vibration, a low resonance that rattled my bones before I even stepped inside. Bellori opened the door. Your first rehearsal, Mr. Carver. Do not falter. I stepped through, violin case in hand. The room was massive, a cathedral within a cathedral. Rows of stone benches formed a half circle around a raised platform. At first glance, I thought a choir of robed singers stood there, heads bowed. But when they lifted their faces, my breath caught. Their features were too perfect, too sharp, like statues carved in flesh. Their mouths moved, but the sounds spilling out weren't Latin or Italian. It was a language my brain refused to translate, syllables that bent like broken glass. My knees wobbled. The violin case felt heavier. Bellori gestured. Play. I swallowed hard. Lifted my violin and drew the bow across the strings. The moment my note entered the air, their song swelled, wrapping around it like a storm finding wind. It wasn't harmony. It was consumption. My sound was devoured, woven into theirs, pulled forward as though the music itself had hands. The chamber shifted. Light rippled across the ceiling, flooding the mosaics with gold. Saints painted centuries ago blinked, their eyes turned, following me. Stone halos pulsed faint light, statues swayed like reeds in a storm. I froze mid-bow, but the strings hummed anyway, a long note vibrating on its own. Then I saw it. Behind the choir's robed backs, shadows unfolded, long feathered skeletal wings made of ash. They weren't illusions. They cast their own shadows, gray and brittle, shedding flakes that vanished before they hit the ground. I nearly dropped my instrument. Amara's sharp whisper pierced through the music. Don't stop. If you stop now, they'll notice you're resisting. So I kept playing. My arms shook, but I obeyed. The language grew louder, rising like a tide. It wasn't sung with joy, but with grief. Every note stretched thin by agony. My chest ached with it. Their voices clawed into my mind, whispering things I couldn't bear to hear. Release us. Burn the silence. End the chain. I wanted to scream, but then the ceiling cracked open, not physically, but like the image of another sky bleeding through. I glimpsed endless black, scattered with faint embers, as if the stars themselves were burning out. Something shifted beyond the veil, vast and heavy, waiting. The music cut off. Just like that, silence slammed into the room. My bow hand collapsed, and the violin nearly slipped from my chin. Bellori clapped once, satisfied. Excellent. The resonance grows. 3 nights and the gate will answer. The gate. The word rang in my head like a hammer. The choir lowered their heads again. The wings folded, vanishing into the shadows like smoke. But I knew what I'd seen. My stomach churned. I looked at Amara. Her face was pale, her fists clenched. She didn't meet my eyes. Bellori turned to me. Mr. Carver, your gift is rare. Do not take it lightly. The music requires obedience. Do you understand? I nodded automatically. My voice had abandoned me. As we left the chamber, I risked one last glance back. One of the robed figures, its face cracked with faint lines of light, lifted its head. Our eyes met. And though no sound left its lips, I felt the words burn into my mind. You play our chains. I staggered, almost tripping on the stairs. Amara caught my arm, steadying me. Don't say a word, she whispered. Not here, not yet. The door closed behind us, sealing the chamber back in silence, but I could still hear them, faintly, like an echo etched into my bones. That night, I dreamed of ash falling from the sky, covering Rome in gray snow, and when I woke, my pillow was dusted with it. I couldn't sleep after that rehearsal. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, their ash-dark wings stretching out behind human shapes, their mouths opening in songs that weren't songs at all. The words I didn't understand still dug into me like hooks. You play our chains. By dawn, I was shaking. My violin case sat across the room, closed, but I swore I could hear a single string humming faintly, as if the instrument were breathing in its sleep. That was when Sister Amara came to me. No knock, no greeting, just the door creaking open and her pale face appearing in the narrow light of the hall. Come, she whispered. If you want answers, follow. I should have refused. Every instinct told me this was the point of no return, but I grabbed my jacket, slipped my shoes on, and followed her into the dark. She led me past the basilica's gilded chapels, down stairwells I hadn't seen before. Each level grew colder, the air thicker. By the third descent, the walls were no longer marble but damp stone, carved long before the Vatican rose above it. Finally, Amara stopped at a heavy iron door. She pressed a small key into the lock. It groaned open. Inside, the chamber stretched wide and cavernous. Torches sputtered along the walls, their smoke curling into shapes I didn't want to study too closely. The air reeked of iron, incense, and something copper sweet. And then I saw them. Not the choir I'd rehearsed with. No, this was worse. They hung from chains bolted into the stone, figures neither fully human nor entirely other. Their skin shimmered faintly, cracked like marble under strain. From their backs, jagged wings of ash drooped, feathers breaking off into dust that vanished before touching the floor. Their mouths were pried open by iron hooks. Blood trickled from their lips down their robes, staining the floor beneath them. And yet, even in silence, I could feel the vibration of their song. I staggered back against the wall, bile rising in my throat. Dear God! Amara's voice was flat, almost hollow. These are the choir below. Once they sang before the throne, now they sing only for chains. My stomach twisted. You're telling me those things are angels? Her eyes flicked to me. They were, before the fall, before the binding. One of them stirred as if it had hurt us. Its eyes opened. eyes that glowed faintly, not like flame, but like embers buried under ash. It fixed on me, and though its jaw couldn't move against the hook, I heard the words in my head as clear as if they'd been spoken. "Play, mortal, set us free." I stumbled forward, as though drawn. My hand brushed my violin case. Amara seized my wrist, yanking me back. Her voice sharpened. "Don't! Not here! Not now! If you play, you'll break the wards, and they will tear this place apart." I shook, my breath ragged. Why are they here? Why chain them like this? Amara's expression tightened. "Because they are useful. Their voices open doors, and the Vatican intends to open one very soon." Her words hit me like ice. "The gate Balori mentioned." She nodded. "The hymns are not prayers, they're keys. And you, Daniel, are the hand that turns them." I felt sick. "And if I refuse?" Her gaze lingered on the angels, their broken bodies straining against iron. "Then they'll find another way, or another player. The gate will open regardless." One of the chained figures shuddered violently, ash falling in a slow cascade. Its voice cut through me, a sound halfway between a sob and a scream. The others stirred, pulling against their restraints, blood running fresh from their mouths. The air vibrated with their agony, the torches flickering in rhythm with the unvoiced hymn. I couldn't take it any more. "We have to stop this." Amara's grip on my wrist softened. For the first time, I saw the crack in her mask of calm. She looked terrified. "You think I haven't tried?" she whispered. "Every attempt ends the same. Chains reforged, guards doubled. Balori knows everything, except—" She looked at me then, truly looked at me, as if weighing something vast. "Except what you will choose when the time comes." The chamber groaned. A low hum swelled in the air, the iron links rattling. I could feel the music building in my bones, though no sound escaped their mouths. Amara pulled me toward the door. "We must go. They'll sense us if we stay longer." I tore my gaze from the chained figures, but as we left, one last ember-eyed angel turned its head, staring straight at me. Its voice burrowed into my skull, leaving me trembling. 3 nights, play or burn with us. When the iron door shut, I thought the silence would be a relief. Instead, it was worse, because now I knew what it hid. The night of the ceremony arrived like a storm I couldn't outrun. They dressed me in black robes trimmed with silver thread, the fabric heavy, suffocating. My violin case was taken from me at the door and returned only when I stepped inside the basilica. It felt less like an instrument now and more like a weapon someone had pressed into my hands. The air was thick with incense. Dozens of candles burned, their flames bending toward the altar as though drawn by something unseen. The basilica was sealed. No tourists, no pilgrims, only cardinals in crimson, bishops in white, and the Pope himself seated high above, his face hidden in shadow. And at the center of it all stood the choir. Not robed singers, not human voices, but the chained figures I had seen below. They had been dragged up from the vaults, their shackles gleaming in the candlelight, their mouths pried wider, hooks gleaming wet. Their wings twitched, shedding ash that floated like dark snow over the marble floor. I wanted to run. Instead, I was ushered to the front, placed where everyone could see me. Cardinal Balori leaned close, his whisper cold against my ear. "Do not falter. Tonight the gate opens and you will be its key." He raised his hand, a signal. The choir began to sing. No human throat could have produced the sound that filled the basilica. It wasn't melody, but vibration, 1,000 voices compressed into one endless chord. The walls trembled, the stained glass shivered in its frames, and the dome above seemed to expand outward into a sky I didn't recognize. My hands shook as I lifted the violin. The first note scraped out rough, trembling, but the music seized me instantly. My bow moved faster than I intended, the strings pulling me into a rhythm that wasn't mine. The manuscript lay open before me, but I didn't need to read it. The symbols burned in my mind already, etched into me since the first rehearsal. Each measure twisted reality. The marble floor rippled like water. Statues leaned forward, stone fingers stretching, eyes glowing faintly as if waking from centuries of slumber. A fissure split across the ceiling. Not in stone, but in sky. Through it, I saw not heaven, not stars, but a vast black void threaded with faint embers like dying galaxies. Something stirred there, immense in watching. I almost stopped, almost, but my bow refused to lift. The choir's voices swelled, blood spilling down their robes, pooling at their feet. Their song was agony given form. And then I felt it, pressure, like a weight pressing against the world itself. A shadow crossed the dome, vast wings spreading across the ceiling. The fissure widened, and light poured down, not gold, not divine, but ash-colored, heavy, suffocating. He was coming. A shape lowered through the crack in the sky. Humanoid, yet not. Its wings stretched wider than the basilica itself, feathers burning and disintegrating into smoke. Its face was veiled in shadow, but its voice shook the bones of everyone present. I am Calora, keeper of the ashen sky. You call, and I answer. The cardinals dropped to their knees. Even the Pope bowed his head. Balori knelt at the altar, arms outstretched. We welcome you, Great One. We open the gate for your descent. Guide us, share your wisdom, grant us your power. Calora's laughter rumbled through the dome. Power you shall have, but all gifts are bought with blood. At that the choir screamed, not in rebellion, but in sheer torment, their song tearing from their throats with enough force to splatter the altar with red. Chains rattled, links snapping under strain. My violin shrieked. The strings bled against my fingertips, warm liquid dripping down the wood. I couldn't stop. The fissure widened further, and Calora lowered one massive hand, its fingers like blackened branches reaching toward the altar. The Pope lifted his head just enough for me to glimpse his face, pale, awestruck, trembling. And I understood. This wasn't worship. It was bargaining. The Vatican wasn't summoning heaven's grace. They were negotiating with its prisoners. I tried to scream, but no sound left me. Only the music poured out, consuming me note by note. Calora's voice boomed again, directed at me this time. You, the mortal player, the song is yours. Through you the gate stands open. His gaze pierced me, hot and endless. My bow froze mid-stroke. For one heartbeat I could breathe. Then a whisper brushed my ear. Not Calora. Not Balori. A softer voice. Familiar. One of the chained singers, its eyes locked on mine. Play the end, mortal. End us. End him. The bow trembled in my hand. The fissure burned wider, the basilica shaking, dust raining from the dome. Cailora's laughter thundered again, his shadow swallowing the altar whole. And I realized the decision was already upon me. If I played on, the gate would open fully. If I stopped, the entire basilica might collapse. Either way, the world would change forever. The basilica trembled as Cailora's shadow spread across the dome. His wings, black fire and ash, eclipsed the saints painted on the ceiling. Their faces seemed to recoil, paint warping, halos flickering like dying candles. The chained choir screamed in unison, their voices climbing into a pitch so sharp my ears bled. Still, my bow kept moving, dragging me deeper into the hymn. The air reeked of blood and incense. Then, Balori dropped to both knees before the descending figure. His crimson robes pooled across the marble, his arms stretched wide like a supplicant at the gallows. "Great Calora," he thundered, "the church kneels before your majesty. We open the gate as you commanded. Accept our devotion and grant us your wisdom." The Pope remained bowed on his throne, silent, trembling. But beside Balori, Monsignor Vieri stepped forward. His face glistened with sweat, but his eyes burned with fevered light. "Take us," Vieri cried. "Bind us to your covenant, make us your instruments, give us the fire to rule, and we will serve." The basilica gasped. Priests, bishops, even cardinals shifting, horrified. Some clutched their rosaries, others looked away. But Balori rose from his buhl, his voice slicing through the disarray. "Brothers," he said, "for centuries we begged heaven for miracles and heard nothing but silence. Now heaven answers, but in ash, not gold. Are we to refuse, or will we take what is offered and seize eternity?" Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The word eternity hung heavy, sticky, like incense turned rancid. Kaialora's laughter filled the dome, deep and resonant, shaking the glass mosaics until hairline cracks split across Christ's outstretched arms. "Yes," the angel of ash rumbled. "You understand, the silence was never abandonment. It was an invitation, and you have accepted." He lowered his hand, vast fingers curling toward Balori. The cardinal didn't flinch. He pressed his forehead to the floor, crimson robes darkening where his knees touched blood. "Take me," Balori whispered. "Use me. Through me, the church will be renewed." Kaialora's hand brushed him. For an instant, light flared, not gold, not holy, but the dim glow of a coal, smoldering, cruel. Balori convulsed, back arching, mouth open in a silent scream. When he rose, his eyes glowed faint red, veins like charred roots spidering across his skin. The crowd recoiled. Vieri fell beside him, desperate. "Me too! Take me too!" Kaialora's shadow engulfed him, and when he staggered upright, he bore the same ember burn in his gaze. My stomach twisted. They weren't bargaining. They were selling. I wanted to stop, to throw my violin to the floor and end it, but my bow hand moved like it belonged to someone else, dragging the hymn forward. My strings burned against my fingers. Blood ran down the wood, staining it black. Balori turned, his voice booming, amplified by something more than lungs. "Do you not see? This is the true covenant. Not the false light of a God who hides, but the flame of one who answers. Boo, and you too shall be remade." The Pope finally lifted his head. His face was ashen, his lips trembling. But he did not kneel. "No," he croaked, this is not salvation." Balori's eyes blazed. "Then it is judgment." Kaialora spread his wings wider, and a shockwave blasted through the basilica. Candles extinguished, statues cracked. The chained choir wailed, their bodies jerking against their hooks, blood spraying across the altar. And then Kaialora spoke, not to Balori, not to the Pope, but to me. "You are the hinge, mortal. Your strings open the door. Play on, and the gate will be wide. Stop, and the gate will collapse, and so will you." The weight of his words crushed me. My knees buckled, sweat pouring down my spine. I gasped, trying to wrench the bow free, but my fingers wouldn't let go. The violin pulsed in my hands like a second heart, each beat pushing me further into the hymn. Then, faintly, I heard another voice, not Kaialora's, not Balori's, softer, rawer, Daniel. I looked up. One of the chained angels had turned its broken face toward me. Its eyes glowed ember red, but not with hatred, something closer to plea. Its song twisted inside my skull. "Do not open. End it here. Burn us if you must." The bow jerked again, slicing across the strings. My own scream drowned in the music. Kaialora's shadow leaned closer, his face still veiled, his teeth gleaming faintly through ash. "Choose, mortal. Play for their power or stop for their ruin. Either way, you are mine." I tried to stop. God help me, I tried. My arm jerked, muscles seizing, bow grinding across the strings. The violin shrieked like a wounded animal, its sound so raw it cut through Kaialora's endless hymn. The basilica shuddered. Dust rained from the dome. The audience, bishops, priests, even the Pope, clutched their ears. But the chained angels sang louder, their bleeding throats forcing melody into madness. Their cries weren't hymns anymore. They were screams full of pain and rage. And yet, I felt them pulling me closer, not to play with them, but against. The strings beneath my fingers blistered with heat. My fingertips split, blood spilling down the polished wood. But the violin drank it, the black surface soaking red until it pulsed in rhythm with my own heart. A note tore from the instrument, not mine, not theirs, but something new, something that didn't belong. Sallora's head tilted, his ash-veiled face cracked into a grin. "Ah," he whispered, voice rolling through the walls, "the vessel resists." Balori snarled, "No, he is ours, he must play." He turned toward me, his ember-lit eyes burning. "Obey, finish the hymn." I don't know where the courage came from, but I spat blood on the floor and rasped, "No." The violin screamed in agreement. Its strings burst one by one, spraying sparks like molten wire. But still, it sang, through my blood, through my marrow. The choir below convulsed. Their chains rattled like iron storms, hooks tearing deeper into their wings. Their voices shifted, not toward Calora, but toward me. They sang my name raw and broken, but they sang it. Daniel. My knees buckled, my vision blurred, but the music inside me twisted sharper, darker. Each note from the violin tore cracks into the marble floor, splitting across the nave like lightning. Statues of saints toppled, some shattered outright, others, God forgive me, moved. Their stone lips broke open in soundless screams, their carved eyes dripping black tears. Calora's shadow recoiled, his wings thrashing like storms of ash. "Blasphemy!" he roared, shaking the mosaics loose from the dome. "You turn their suffering against me." The chained angels howled louder. Some ripped free, flesh tearing as hooks burst from their backs. Their broken wings unfurled in jagged arcs of bone and ash. They didn't fly. They fell upward, crashing against the vaulting like dying meteors. Blood rained from the choir loft, splattering cardinals in crimson robes. Vieri staggered forward, pointing at me with wild eyes. "Stop him! Before he undoes it all!" The guards surged, black-cloaked men with blades drawn. My fingers clenched the bow tighter, and before I knew what I was doing, I slashed it across the air. The sound that burst forth wasn't music. It was thunder, a raw, tearing shriek that hurled the first wave of guards backward. Their bodies hit the columns and stuck, limbs twisted, jaws screaming without sound. I stared at the bow in horror. It dripped with my blood, glowing faint red, like it had become part of the choir's rebellion. The Pope, trembling on his throne, raised a shaking hand. "Enough," he whispered. His voice cracked, but it carried. In God's name, enough. But no one listened. Not Balori, not Kyalora, not even the angels. The hymn had shattered into war. Kyalora's roar shook the very bones of the basilica. "You dare fracture the covenant? Then drown in the harmony you broke." He flung out his hand, and the shadows surged. Black fire poured through the aisles, burning banners igniting the pews. Screams filled the cathedral as priests fled. I staggered backward, clutching the violin like it was the only anchor left. Alara's hand caught mine, her face pale, streaked with blood. "Daniel, listen to me," she gasped. "You're turning the hymn against itself. If you push further, it won't just break the Vatican, it'll break you." But the choir below sang louder, their ruined throats uniting in a chorus that rattled the heavens themselves. Their song wasn't pleading anymore. It was vengeful, molten, alive. I felt it climbing into me, burning through my ribs, every note branding my bones. "I can't stop," I whispered. "You must." Alara's grip tightened, her eyes wild. "Or you'll open a gate no one can close, not even God." Above us, Kyalora bellowed, his voice fracturing like glass. his vast body twisted, wings shattering into a storm of ash. Bellori and Vieri shrieked in ecstasy, their flesh cracking open with red light as if they were becoming something not human anymore. I raised the bow one last time, my hands soaked in blood, the violin humming like a furnace. The decision burned through me. Obey Calora, silence the choir, or shatter it all and let the hymn destroy the Vatican from within. My choice came out as a single searing note. The basilica split down the center. The basilica had never sounded like this before. Not in the quiet prayers of dawn, not in the solemn hymns of Easter, not in the thunder of choirs filling every vault. What shook the stones tonight was something else. A roar, a wail, the shattering of centuries pressed into a single chord. The choir below had turned. Their song, once muted agony, rose into defiance. Chains rattled, striking the floor like drums of war. Blood from their backs, where wings had been torn and bound, splattered the marble in rivulets that ran toward the altar. The air itself trembled, vibrating with notes not meant for human throats, and I was still playing. The violin no longer felt like wood and string. It felt alive, thrumming under my fingers, blood seeping from the seams dripping onto my wrist. The bow shredded horsehair with every stroke, but the sound only grew sharper, angrier. Cardinal Bellori shouted over the cacophony, his vestments drenched crimson. "Hold the hymn steady! Anchor the gate!" Beside him, Cardinal Vieri had already dropped to his knees before Caialora's half-formed figure. The thing hovered just above the altar, wings like smoke and fire curling out from its spine, face shifting between beauty and terror. Its voice layered over the choir, commanding, beckoning. Play, Daniel. Play until the walls break. My vision blurred. I saw the basilica splitting apart, frescoes cracking open as painted saints wept blood, statues twisted, marble mouths screaming. The great dome groaned like the heavens themselves were about to fall. Then the first explosion hit. The western nave collapsed under a blast of force, sending tourists' relics and scaffolding crashing to the floor. Vatican guards rushed in, weapons raised, not rifles, but strange devices glowing with sigils. They fired bolts of light that dissolved before touching Calora, ricocheting back to scorch their own flesh. Chaos ignited. Priests turned on priests. Some screaming prayers, others tearing off their collars and swearing oaths to the being on the altar. The faithful fought the faithless in a storm of fists, blades, and holy fire. Amara was at my side, pulling at my arm. "Daniel, stop. If you keep playing, you'll give her everything." "I can't," I gasped, and it was true. The violin held me as much as I held it. My muscles weren't my own. Every note dragged from me like confession, like penance. The choir below surged, wings of ash stretching out, their song cracking the mosaics overhead. Through the fractures in the dome, I saw the night sky blaze with unnatural light. Something descending, something vast. Bellori raised a relic, an iron crown wrapped in thorns. His voice cut through the storm. "We give Rome, we give the world. Grant us dominion, Calora." The entity's wings flared, spanning the entire nave. Shadows poured down like liquid, drowning the pews, twisting bodies into husks. Those who knelt were marked, their eyes burning white. Those who resisted were crushed under invisible weight, pinned like insects. I forced the bow down, screaming against the strings. A wrong note screeched out, jagged and broken. The violin bled harder, but the discord spread. Like poison in the water, the choir wailed, chains snapped. One by one their shackles broke. They staggered forward, wings half-formed, singing not for Caialora now, but for themselves. Their hymn turned raw, a dirge of vengeance. The basilica convulsed, columns cracked, fire burst from the altar. The relics of saints rattled from their gilded tombs. Bellori's eyes widened as the very power he sought slipped from his grasp. "You fool!" Vieri shouted, clutching the altar rail. "You can't control her." Calora turned her face, half radiant, half rotting, toward them both. Her laughter shattered stained glass, raining shards across the combatants, and in that moment I felt the violin falter. The grip loosened. Amara's voice cut through the storm. "Daniel, choose, end the hymn." I looked around me, bodies writhing in shadow, angels bound for centuries screaming their freedom, cardinals begging to be gods. I raised the bow for one last stroke, and I played wrong. Every note clashed, every harmony shattered. It was ugly, broken, discordant, but it was mine. The basilica split open, the dome ripped like paper. Fire and ash burst upward in a pillar, carrying screams into the night sky. Calora shrieked, her form unraveling, torn between ascent and descent. The choir's chains shattered completely, wings erupting in storms of feathers and ash. And I was thrown backward, crashing into the transept as the world collapsed into sound and shadow. When I opened my eyes, Rome itself was shaking. St. Peter's Basilica, the eternal heart of Christendom, was falling. When I came to, dust filled my lungs. The great dome of St. Peter's lay in ruins above me, moonlight and fire pouring through the shattered ceiling. The air stank of blood and incense, of something older and bitter, ashes that weren't from stone or wood, but wings. I staggered to my feet, violin still clutched in my hand. The strings were broken, but it throbbed with its own heartbeat, leaking blackened resin that dripped like tar. And she was there. Calora stood in the center of the rubble, her form half divine, half decayed. One wing shone with blinding light, feathers like molten silver. The other was charred bone, dripping embers with every twitch. Her face flickered between beauty and rot, a mirror of heaven's glory and hell's hunger. The choir below circled her, unchained now, their voices fractured, torn between hymns of devotion and screams of vengeance. Cardinal Bellori knelt still, but blood streamed from his eyes, his hands trembling as he raised the thorned crown. "Take me, make me your vessel." Vieri, clutching a broken staff, shouted over him, "No, she cannot be contained. Kill her before she consumes everything." And Amara, dear God, Amara raised her hood, her lips moving not in prayer but in the same guttural tongue as the choir. Her eyes glowed faintly, twin embers. My stomach dropped. "Amara?" She turned to me, sorrow carved across her face. "I was born from their song, Daniel, a child of their chains. Did you really think I came here by accident?" The ground split between us. Flames roared upward, casting shadows like clawed hands. Calora's voice poured into me, not sound, but invasion. "Play again, mortal. Finish the hymn. Become the bridge." "No," I whispered, gripping the violin. My body shook, every nerve screaming to obey. The choir wailed, voices splitting. Some sang for freedom, others for annihilation. One staggered forward. Wings of ash shedding into nothing, grasping at my arm. "Help us," it croaked, "or end us." Bellori lunged, forcing the crown toward Calora's head. "I give you eternity." She laughed, a sound like glass breaking in water. With a sweep of her burned wing, she incinerated him. His body collapsed into red dust, the crown clattering uselessly to the stones. Vieri turned on me, his face twisted with terror. "Carver, strike her down before the hymn completes. Strike her!" But Calora's gaze pinned me. "Do you believe them? Do you believe any of them?" Visions flooded me. I saw Bellori scheming for power, Vieri plotting for survival, Amara whispering songs not of hope, but of release. And beneath it all, the choir writhing in eternal chains, angels who had once sung glory now shackled in silence. The truth, no one here wanted salvation, only release. And Calora, she wanted me. "Daniel," Amara begged, her voice torn between human and angel. Don't resist. Let it end. Let her take us all. Vieri shouted over her face red with spit and blood. Kill them both. The church must endure. The violin burned in my hands. It sang without strings, a low hum that pulsed with my heartbeat. My choice was already carving itself into sound. I raised the bow. Kalora's eyes widened, her voice curling into my mind. Yes, yes, open the gate. But I didn't play her hymn. I dragged the bow across dead strings, a jagged scream of dissonance. The sound tore through the chamber like knives. The choir shrieked, staggering back. Some collapsed, wings dissolving into cinders. Others howled in rage, clawing at the walls. Kailura reeled, her perfect wing molting feathers that burst into fire mid-air. You dare defy the hymn. I'm not your instrument, I said. My throat bled with the force of the words. The violin cracked. A line split down its spine, glowing with light not of heaven, not of hell, something in between. Amara lunged at me, tears streaming down her face. If you don't finish it, we'll all burn in silence. Her hands clawed for the violin, but I shoved her back. Then burn free. Kalora screamed, wings beating in fury, tearing the basilica further apart. Statues exploded, saints crumbling into shards. The altar collapsed into a pit of flame. And then she came for me. Her charred hand closed around my chest. My ribs felt like glass, ready to shatter. Her face leaned close, whispering in every tongue at once. You were chosen to open. You will not close me. The violin's crack widened, a final note built inside, begging to be released. I drew the bow, one last stroke. Dissonant, broken, mine. The sound didn't just fill the basilica, it tore through it. Walls bent inward, fire sucked into a single collapsing point. Kalora shrieked, her form warping, torn between planes. The choir cried out, ash and light scattering into the night sky. When the note ended, silence reigned. I dropped to my knees, the violin shattering in my hands, nothing left but splinters and blood. And through the smoke, only two figures remained, me and Amara kneeling across the ruin. Her ember eyes dimmed. You've broken the hymn, she whispered. But at what cost? I couldn't answer, because in my chest, beneath my skin, I felt it. A low hum, faint but steady. The hymn hadn't ended. It had moved into me. The ruins of the basilica were silent, but inside me, the hymn still played. It wasn't loud. It was subtle, like a heartbeat behind my heartbeat, a vibration under my skin. Every step I took across the shattered marble made the sound rise. Every breath drew the faintest echo of 1,000 chained voices. Amara limped beside me, her hood torn back, her face streaked with blood and ash. Her ember-glow eyes flickered, fading, but not gone. She looked at me like I wasn't Daniel Carver anymore. Maybe she was right. We reached the altar's crater. From the depths, a figure rose slowly, formed of fire and shadow. Kalora. But she wasn't triumphant anymore. She was fractured, her wings trembling. One shimmered like shattered glass, light bleeding through cracks. The other was blackened bone, brittle, shedding chunks into the void. Her voice, when it came, was hoarse and broken. You carry it now. My hymn, my chain. You think that makes you free? I gripped the splinters of my violin. The wood still bled faint resin. It doesn't make me free. It makes me responsible. Her smile was terrible and tender at once. Then be responsible. Finish it. Play the last note. End the suffering. End me. Or take my place beside me, and we begin again. The hymn inside me surged, pushing against my ribs, begging to be released. I saw visions, streets of Rome crumbling into fire, choirs of ash flooding the earth, heaven's gates ripping open. I could end it now with one final chord. Or I could let her in. Daniel, Amara whispered, her voice raw. If you finish it, you might burn with her. If you don't. Her words died. We both knew the truth. Calora stretched her ruined hand toward me. Play, mortal. Be my vessel. Or destroy me and lose yourself in the song forever. The basilica groaned above us, stones still shifting. Somewhere outside, sirens wailed. Police, fire brigades, maybe soldiers. They couldn't touch this. This was mine. I raised the violin splinters, pressed them to my chest. The hymn inside me roared, louder now, trying to burst free. For a moment, I almost gave in, almost let her hand close around mine. Then I remembered the faces. The choir, chained in agony, Balori's thirst for power, Amar's broken confession, and I realized this hymn was never hers alone. It was theirs, and maybe now it was mine. I drew the bow across nothing. A sound erupted, not from strings, but from my bones. It wasn't music anymore. It was every cry, every prayer, every scream of the silenced. It tore through Calora like fire through parchment. She staggered back, her wings disintegrating into ash and light, her voice twisted into a final plea. You were meant to serve. You were meant to open the way. No, I said. My voice was the note. My breath was the hymn. I was meant to end it. The world went white. When the light faded, Calora was gone. Nothing remained of her but dust, floating like snow through the broken basilica. The hymn inside me dimmed, no longer a roar, just a faint hum, a scar, not a chain. I collapsed, coughing, and Amar caught me. Her ember eyes were almost human now, flickering out. You did it, she whispered. No, I said, my voice barely a breath. We did it. She smiled weakly, then faded into ash in my arms. One of the choir's children, returning to silence. I held her until there was nothing left but soot staining my hands. Sirens grew louder outside. Voices shouted in Italian. Boots pounded the cobblestones. Rescue teams would come. They'd see rubble, fire, corpses. But they'd never see what I had seen. They'd never hear the hymn. Only I would. I stood, brushing ash from my coat. The basilica loomed in ruin around me, but above it the dawn was breaking, light spilling over Rome's rooftops. The hymn whispered faintly in my chest, patient, eternal. I knew it would never leave me. I wasn't just Daniel Carver anymore. I was the keeper of a song that could open heavens or tear them down. I walked out into the morning light, through the ruins of faith and fire, carrying silence that was not silence at all, and I prayed, not for forgiveness, not for salvation, but for strength. Because one day, the hymn would rise again, and when it did, the world would need someone to play the final note.